Page 17, Dancing Fingers. On page 16, they're introducing you to the key of E major. This is one of the problems I have with the John Thompson series. They introduce all these keys before they introduce the scales. And in my mind, that's backwards. You need to know the scale to really play in the key, because the scale teaches you the notes, the white and black notes that are in the key. You don't have to worry about all those sharps and flats and stuff in there, because when you play this piece, now you got to think about all these four sharps. There's four different notes now that are all sharped, and you got to remember which ones they are and what. However, that's what they're doing, so that's what we're going to do. Now, remember I said before, the order of the sharps are always in the same order. The first sharp is always an F. It's F sharp. So you don't have to figure out which notes are sharped. They're always the same ones. F is the first one. C sharp is the second, always the second. G sharp is always the third. We've had A major before. That's what. Now we're adding the fourth sharp, and that's a D sharp. And it's always the fourth sharp, D sharp. So we have the F sharp, the C sharp, the G sharp, and the D sharp. We have everything except the A sharp. It's the only one we're not using yet. We'll get there. So when you run across these notes, you're going to play these black keys instead. There's a lot of black keys. Actually, I find E major is one of the easier keys to play because it falls under the fingers very nicely. You just got to remember all these sharps. Well, if you knew the E major scale, this would be a piece of cake because you just play the notes in the scale. Now they talk about the chord, the E chord, E major chord. Remember, on a chord, we're building the chord on the first step of the key. So C major, it would be the C chord here, and it's every other note for three notes, right? In G major, it would be the G chord. It doesn't matter where you play it. Where the G is the bottom note, and it's three notes. Okay, F is the same thing, F chord. Well, E major, same thing here, except we have a G sharp now. So we have an E chord. Then you run across it, you see it in this, it's right off the bat in the left hand. That's an E chord. An E, a G sharp. You'll learn to recognize them in the music. Well, you can turn it over. Remember, we can invert the chords. Because I could take a C chord and I'll put the C on top. I've inverted it one time, it's first inversion. It's still a C chord. And then I can invert again here, and then it's still a C chord. It's just second inversion. You can do that with all of them. I do that with E chord. Put the E on top. Come here. I put the G sharp on top. I'll do it again. I'm back to where I was. Root position, by the way, is when the notes are one every other note, and the bottom note identifies the chord. That's root position. Because if I turn it over here, it's not every other note anymore, and there's two notes here. And the bottom note does not identify the chord anymore, because there's two notes here. I got to put it where it's every other note, and once I get that, then I can say, okay, the bottom note identifies the chord. Well, E is the same thing. Root position, then first inversion, then second inversion, and then root position. Okay, that's sort of what they're talking about. It'll make a little more sense, I hope, as we go through this, because you can do this with any key. Anyway, let's talk about this fingers thing over here on page 17. 3 lines long, although it's actually longer than that because you have a DS Alfini at the end. I'll come back to that a little later. Treble and bass clef, 4 sharps in the key signature. We're in the key of E major. Already talked about that. And common time, or 4/4 time. And we have a pickup beat again. So we're coming in on beat 4, which means the first 3 beats should be somewhere else. And if you look at the second line, in the middle of the line, where the end of bar, the thin and thick lines, that's the end of a piece symbol. That's what that, it means the piece is going to end there eventually. And if you look there, it's 3 counts on that. Well, that's fine, except that leaves a pickup beat then to the second section. You see, they've taken that and split it, that measure, split it. Well, then that one, now you have a pickup beat to the second section. That means we need another measure with 3 counts in it. And if you look around, there isn't. So in my opinion, that's an error. However, it doesn't affect how we play it. We're just playing it. So, but we're coming on beat 4. In the right hand, you're here. So that puts you in this position. Remember the F sharp and G sharp in the key signature? That becomes part of the position. So it's 4 and. 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. You don't need these other finger numbers. I wish they'd get rid of them. You don't need any more finger numbers until the second line, second measure. And when you have the A's, repeated A's, now we're going to change hand positions here. And you can change hand positions anytime on those A's. I could do it on the second one. But you can do either one, doesn't matter. But you need a thumb there for that first eighth note. Remember that this is your hand position because this C sharp and D sharp are in the key signatures. You got to include those. And then during the rest, you come back down. Okay. You don't need any of these other finger numbers here. Just stay in this position and play the note that's on that key. Please don't read finger numbers on these things. I know it's easier to say just use that finger and don't worry about what note it's on. You're headed for a big failure if you do that. Force yourself to read these notes. I would encourage you to cross out those other finger numbers. You only need a finger number at the beginning to tell you where the hand is and when you have to move. You need a finger number there. Now, let's go down to the last line, last 2 measures, because we're here. Now, A sharp, so I'm going to take 4th finger that's on A and put it on A sharp. Now we're using all black keys. Left hand, well, you get the chords. The E chord, whole notes, and then you get a dotted half note eventually, which is a 1 sus 4. I won't get into it. It just means the middle note comes up here. That's all. Last line, last 2 measures, it's an A sharp, which is on your 2nd finger, which is on the A sharp. Okay? Put the hands together, and when you do this, don't worry about hesitating. You're just trying to figure out how they work together. Here, these together, hold the left hand down, and then here, and then here, and then here. Remember this comes up, and then the left hand gets a rest. So these 8th notes are by themselves. You go through and put the hands together, and then go back through it really slowly and get rid of the hesitation so it's a steady beat throughout. Nice and slow is fine, but a steady beat. And when you can do that, then we'll add in the articulation. That's the staccatos and slurs. Here, I'm flexing at the wrist on this. It's short. See, it's only the 2nd quarter note there that's staccato, not the 1st. The tendency is to do them both. That's not what's written, so do it. So be careful on these. It may not be what you think it is. Left hand, they don't give anything, and you can't connect them really. Just do the best you can. Get as close to connecting it as you can. On the end there, the last 2 measures, you can connect those. So go ahead and connect those. And once you have a handle on the articulation, then we'll think about the dynamics. Again, applies to the melody. Mezzo forte at the beginning, sort of loud. These chords need to be soft. You have a crescendo go up to loud. Now you're loud. I suggest that rather than going up to loud here, that when we start our 8th notes, come down to moderately soft and go back up to moderately loud. Just then come down. Here, doesn't say anything, but the way it's written, you keep getting crescendos on these 8th notes. Later on, same thing. But they don't tell you when. I mean, if I'm already up to loud and I crescendo, now I'm very loud and then I'm crescendoing again, it doesn't make any sense. So I'm suggesting on each of these, come down to moderately soft and go back up to moderately loud each time. Each time, you get that a few times. Now, in the middle of the second line here you can stay moderately loud because now you're going up to loud. Here, so that's fine. And then you come down when you go on back to... The whole thing there is moderately loud on the second section. Did I explain sections? Now, like chapters in a book, you can have sections in a piece of music. Well, the first section is up to the middle of the second line where the fine is. It's not fine, it's fine. That's section 1. Section A, I should say, we use letters. Section A, and then section B is the rest of it. 2 sections. So it's like it's an ABA form, because we're doing A section, then the B section, then we'll go back and do the A section again. I'll explain that in a minute. And now that it's been a minute, let me explain that. The roadmap, you're going to play it all the way through. And at the end of the last line, there's a DS all fine. DS means, remember, go back to the sign. The sign you'll see at the top, there's a double bar there after the pickup beat. Double bar, that's a section indicator. I don't know why they need a double bar there. Okay. And then you have the S, the fancy looking S thing. That's the sign. So you go back to that point, and the fine is in the middle of the second line. So you go back and you play that part again. Did I talk about the speed? I didn't talk about the speed. Oopsie. Let me talk about the speed. I'm getting all confused. Allegro means fast, or some people say it means happy. To me, it means fast. But it's the feel of it. It's not the speed of the beat. Because the eighth notes will slow it down a little bit. And it has to be accurate. So what can you do accurately? These eighth notes have to be even and controlled. It's just not. That's too fast. But it's not. That's too slow. It's on the quick side. It's just be happy about it. Be happy. That's an order. My Allegro. Your Allegro could be a little faster or slower than that. It's up to you, but it has to be accurate. Just make sure you can get all the slurs and the staccatos in. Look at the last line there. Here. See the slurs? Just look like taking a breath in the second measure. And the tendency a lot of times is to connect an extra note. For instance, at the end of the second line, the last 2 measures of the second line, you're here. Here. The tendency is to connect in that last measure to here. To connect those, that's not what's written. You should lift up. Just lift up. It's not short. It's not staccato. Just lift up. Just separate it. Be very careful on this. Now, once you've learned it and you get into it and you start feeling the music, you can adjust the articulation a little bit as you feel it. If you want to do that, that's fine. But when you're learning it, play what's written. Let's play this together very slowly and double check all our notes and fingerings and things, or the rhythms, excuse me. Notes and rhythms. Not going to do any dynamics. I'm doing all about the same. We will do the DS all fine, and I'll do the staccatos and slurs. So I'll give us 3 counts. I go very slowly, sort of slow. Let's slow to me, I don't know. 1 and ready and go and. And 2 and 3 and. And 2 and rest and. And 2 and 3 and. And 2 and 3 to the side. And 2 and 3 and. And 2 and rest and.